There's a great deal of talk about income distribution. And you might think that this is talk about income distribution among people. It's not. It's talk about income distribution among abstract statistical categories. We're constantly hearing how the top 20% of the American income earners, households, make X times as much as the bottom 20%. But these are not people. In terms of people, there are 39 million people in the bottom 20%. There are 64 million people in the top 20%. These are not percents of people, these are percents of households. And households vary with income, with race, with time, and with all sorts of other variables. We hear talk about the rich and the poor. And what amazes me is how seldom they define what that means. I remember some years ago talking with a lady who was discussing her financial difficulties. And I said, do you realize that you are among the top 10% of wealthiest Americans? And she looked at me as if I were crazy. But she was, merely by owning a home in Palo Alto at California real estate prices. She was one of the 10% top. And if she wanted to move out into a tent with her family, she could have boasted of being one of the richest people around. Unfortunately, if she wanted to move into an apartment indoors, also at California prices, she would have been worse off. Most people have no idea what is meant by this top 20% who are so routinely described as rich, where that begins. And I just received, before I came out here from California, the latest census data. And any household that has a total income of $75,000 is in that top 20%. That is, any husband and wife making $38,000 a year each is in that top 20%. These are the rich whose taxes we dare not reduce for fear of pandering to entrenched wealth. Genuinely rich people and genuinely poor people, I think, would come to something like less than 7% of the total American population. And yet political campaigns and debates are carried on as if these were the two great classes in society, and the other 93% of us don't really count. Rawls has something which he calls the difference principle, which he says that no policy should be advocated if it does not help those on the bottom. Now, the problem with applying that in the American society is that those on the bottom don't stay on the bottom. In fact, in no quintile of the income distribution do the people tend to stay there. People are constantly moving among these brackets. A study was done some years ago showing that at the end of 8 years, more of the people who were in the bottom 20% at the beginning were now in the top 20% than remained in the bottom 20%. So you have this enormous turnover of people in these brackets, and yet the discussions of income distribution are always discussion of the relationships among those brackets, not among flesh and blood people. I think most of us, if every millionaire in America went broke and was immediately replaced by someone in poverty who became a millionaire, most of us would consider that to be quite a redistribution of income. The way the numbers are used, that would be no redistribution at all, because the brackets would have the same relationship to each other as before. And they're talking about the brackets, not about the people who are moving among these brackets. In any case, Rawls has what he calls the difference principle, that those on the bottom, he seems to assume that they're sort of permanently on the bottom. Now, if you have a fluid society in which anyone who wants to rise has a very high probability of being able to rise, then what you're saying is that you're making the well-being of those who don't choose to do anything be preemptive over the well-being of other people. It means that if someone were to come up with a policy that would benefit masses of people, that would enable, for example, every poor child in America to get the finest education possible, develop his talents to the fullest, that policy should not be put into effect if it did nothing for some wino lying drunk in the gutter. And so what Rawls calls the difference principle, I call the wino's veto. Thank you very much.